I'll put this back on. What was that? Let's remember that frame. Anyway, let's take a look at Tezos together. Thanks so much for tuning in. And yes, you know, in some senses, YouTube land would have you say that the first and most important part of your video is the first sort of 10 seconds. And there I am all over the place. But then again, I'm the OG technical analyst for Tezos anyway. And I'm sure if you search on Tezos on YouTube, I'm all over the place anyway. So, you know, here we are. You know that this episode is indeed a Tezos episode. Let's take a look at where we've come from. We've not managed to make it past the 236, nor have we made it past our purple line here in terms of the Bitcoin, the USD pair for Tezos. But we have actually seen a bit of positivity recently with the prices coming up to 261, having down here at their lows in the 230, 240 area and up to 260. That means, of course, you've got that 10% move towards the top side, opening up decent trading for people who thought that this here was a decent opportunity to get in for a long, if that was to be the case. Now, what we don't actually really have in terms, this is the 2-day, we're at a 24-hour time frame. What we don't have on the 2-day time frame was anything screaming at us in terms of you know, divergences and whatnot to say you've got to get in now. And as you can see, the DMI here in picking up with its strength in terms of the ADX moving towards the top side, haven't had this crossover here when the ADX was above 20, you know, back there on the 30th of August, 1st of September period, you know, so this is when we dropped outside of the pitchfork in the background over there. So that's what that was. That's pitchfork being an original one. If it was an inside one, then you see we've come all the way bang down towards the bottom end of it, and this is potentially where we're finding support at. Now I'm just going to move this back to being the way it was before anyway, for the purposes of this show, and go back down to the 24-hour time frame and say, well, hey, hold on a second, maybe we did get a bit of the old bullish divergence coming in with these lows, and maybe that was why we said in yesterday's episode, is that the end of the drop just now? And if it was, then, you know, you got the opportunity to get in there at the 240s area, come up here towards 260. So we've had a nice 10% move towards the top side, benefiting everybody who's looking to have traded, and that's obviously very, very decent to have had. So that's cool. And then where could we be going next is the question, I suppose. And let's just kind of take a closer look then at the price action from a 4-hour perspective. And we did talk about various things, of course, you know, potential for things like this could be an inverted head and shoulders on the bottom of here. And we've got this, what do we have here? Convergence in this section here on the RSI in terms of a lack of bearish divergence. The MACD's got a touch of it, so we're a little bit wedgy here, as we can see in terms of what's going on just now. Then the Stochastics also has a touch of that as well between this high and this subsequent high. And let's see the DMI going through across during this period where it's coming in effectively in terms of the DI, the positive DI without that divergence. So the question really comes to us at this point are we looking at here between these two sections on the 4-hour time frame a sort of rising wedge thing, or is this going to be a sort of failed bearish pattern and indeed just have a measured move towards the top side, in which case, you know, we'll be looking at some sort of thing along these lines, potentially taking us up here towards our key inflection points previously, pushing past this 280 area, coming in towards this this white line that we have on the go here, which is the 236 Fibonacci point at 283. If this were to sort of fail and go towards the top side. Now, if this were to fail and go towards the top side, what you're really kind of looking at that point is whether or not this is some sort of bottoming formation, you know, whether you want to call this an Adam and Eve or whatever. It really doesn't matter to me what you call it, but the easiest thing to look to for this one right here would, of course, be a inverted head and shoulders between these areas here. So looking at that as your left shoulder, looking at this as your head, and looking at this as your right shoulder. If you would oblige and give me the green background, please. There we go. And then, you know, are we going to then push past this point, which makes this a very key area of the 260s for us in terms of this little bit of structure just now. And of course, you know, there's obviously various different ways of looking at that, as I've just demonstrated with the wedge and the head and shoulders. But another way of looking at this just here, of course, quite clearly for us, is whether or not this structure at the bottom here so far is lining up to be a sort of ascending triangle idea for us. Now, it's not perfect here in the way that I've drawn that in, but could this be an ascending triangle? That's a bit closer to perfection there. And in which case, the measured move off the back of this is more or less the same as the other things that we've been talking about, whether you're looking at wedges, inverted head and shoulders, or whatever. So the pattern trading, I'm fairly agnostic to what particular approach you want to take to doing it. And what we could be looking at then is those key areas above us. And if we did go up there into this yellow background pattern where we have the parallel channel, then maybe we'd be trying against that 236, and maybe things could look decent. If I just jump to another sort of chart where I've got different drawings on the go here, you can see that what we're actually trying right now, where the prices are, is to move past the median line of this. We came up, we pushed past it, came back down, retested it, and tried it again. So we were rejected on our first pass. So far then, we've come up and we've moved past it again. So then you can see the sort of structure here. Topside targets then come in there at that 280 area, or depends on how quickly we're able to get up there. If that were to be the case, maybe $3 even being a potential for us. Of course, there's going to be a lot of profit taking coming in at certain areas along the way, such as potentially that 270s to 280s region, where we had a previous high over here. Now, again, you can see a distinct wedge here on the RSI in terms of this 4-hour time frame. Looking at this thing here, so this is not the only place where this story exists. If you want, you can watch the Chainlink episode and see sort of similar type of chat. So will we see this sort of thing here fail or whatever, and coincide nicely with a decent cross of the the positive DI and the negative DI here on the DMI, where the ADX remains above 20. This would be quite a tasty one for us if this were to be the case. So we do have a signal just now telling us it's the buy signal, if you like, if that's the way you want to look at things. We did have some bullish divergence at the bottom here as well. We have got sort of patterns that could lead you towards thinking that. So there's various things all adding together to say that you could, of course, be going long off the back of this, but there's also that little sort of wedge type area. And if we were to then fail or move down the way off the back of that and actually push past this area at 240, then of course things would be quite negative, and your next target down the way would be, of course, $2 flat that you'd be looking to. So that's how that is. Let's go over to the Bitcoin pairing and see if we see anything particularly distinctly different. Now, the pattern stuff could all be the same in terms of the wedges, the triangles, and the head and shoulders chat as well here. And you can see that there's this just distinctly drawn in area of resistance up above our head, profit taking line coming in there at 25k, 2,547 in terms of just the numbers here, but actually 25,470 satoshis would be what you'd be looking to on that one. And I would definitely actually now have stopped out if I'd been managing this properly in terms of that trade there. But there you go, I'm in it, I'll stick in it just for now anyhow, in terms of my wee trading episode there on the background, which is, regrettable doing it and obviously being very distracted. If you think about this, by the way, this is kind of like getting in on here. If you were to consider each one of these candles to be like the analogous to a day, what I've really done is opened up a position over there and then waited 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 2 weeks before I've actually checked back in to see whether or not I should be stopping out of my position or not. So there's some takeaway value for you there if you're to be looking at it from that perspective. It's kind of funny. Yeah. So will this turn out to be a wedge where it's a bearish, wedge, or will it be the more positive thing? Now, in terms of the wedges and whatever else, we have this upward movement here. You could say it's kind of flaggy. If we look up to the 12-hour time frame, you could say that maybe this is kind of like a bear flag, perhaps, or whatever. It really depends on what perspective you want to take. It's quite simple though. Movements down below 24k are negative, and movements up above 25k or 25.5k are going to be positive, and the 236 coming in there at 26k is sort of the key inflection area for us just now towards the top side, giving you decent profit taking targets. Of course, 10% moves, yada yada. Looking at this is the 12-hour, this is the 24-hour time frame. So if you'd taken yesterday's video sort of as a positive signal to you and then gone up towards the top side, you're sat there having had a 6% move up. You're currently looking, even if you just done it from body close, obviously this is quite tight on it, and up to here you're a couple of percent up. So your manageable trade areas in and around this is all okay. It's all looking okay so far, and maybe we see things moving on past it, in which case this low here and this low here, which is the lower low over here, would come in, and you'd say that this was very much got a touch of this bullish divergence here between these lows as part of what could be conceivably an upward trend. But of course this has got a broadening aspect to it, and instead it's kind of just a massive rectangle. So anyway, this is at the bottom end of of the sort of the period, and ultimately you could be looking up to that 40k region, looking at massive gains if they were to get a big ride up towards the top side. If you want to have that gain-tastic look at things. Instead, if you want to be a little bit more sort of sensible, I suppose you're still looking at massive gains if you were to get a golden pocket retrace on this thing. And if you were to trade it off the back of a move up past this zone, then you're looking at a solid 30%, for instance. So there's no need to have any FOMO or rush into trading. You can absolutely take things easy. And you know what? And that's another couple of days gone by where I've just left that position. So I suppose this is kind of analogous to people who trade badly and get into a position that's failing and decide that they're going to keep a hold of it no matter what. And then it just keeps going up, and a couple of weeks go by and things go really kind of nasty for them. So I'm going to check in with that in a second here and see, what the crack is with that one. Oh, I have to look at Ethereum. Yep, down here, retesting this and moved them down below it slightly. This is as a result of the Ethereum being positive at the minute. If the dollar pairing and the Bitcoin pairing type chat that we had just there now plays out in a positive aspect, then of course this would go towards the top side. Profit taking targets coming in, I suppose, at that 0.007, but we know that the sort of 0.08 area is of course much more important. We talked about this a whole bunch of times. If we did fail these areas, then the downside sort of targets would be, you could realistically as well, if you wanted to short off the back of this movement down here, it could be down towards that 64 area. We've been rejected from the bearish control zone here so far, but putting in a low which is here for higher than this low, looking at this low over here and this low over here, that kind of converges slightly between these two as well. So there's not that necessarily that hidden bullishness, or indeed that bearish divergence, or bullish, just classic bullish divergence, is what you'd be looking for. So and there isn't any of that hidden bearish divergence or any of that sort of crap really just there. This is just convergent in that sense. Looking at this here in terms of the top side, we've got a lower high here than this one, and that's convergent as well. So everything's just kind of convergent along the way here, which kind of makes a good deal of sense given that this is mostly traded just by arbitrage bots, just kind of mostly pushing this along as opposed to really people trading it proactively. However, I do appreciate that some people do, and in which case, decent entries remain down there if you needed to, either where we are more or less now at the 0.07 region, failing that 0.065 perhaps. Of course, that's a profit taking target likewise. And down there at 0.058 if that needs to be the case. The DM negative, this is still very much in a negative stance. We're in a downward trend here. By the way, just let me be clear, this is a bear trend that we're in here and have been since over there on, what do you want to call it? So we say that we've been really bearishly trending down since then, actually. And if we did see that, then instead, let's just draw the Fibonacci in from over here instead, down to these most recent of lows, and that puts it in at 8.85, which is that clear area we spoke about all the way back over there anyways being important. That's what we'll be looking for if we want to see things turn around. Indeed, though, if you wanted to do this sort of in the most sort of positive, sort of immediate positive way, let's just say that if I'm trending from that point, then if we get up past 7.7, then of course we've taken it to 236, in which case your profit taking targets could be in there at 83, 890, and then the 618 coming in there at 96, which would obviously just all keep things going along fairly nicely in terms of just a parallel channel towards the downside, really. Essentially, you're going to remove these two lines here because they're not actually particularly useful. Suffice it to say that we're in the middle of that zone at the minute. This also could be drawn in as sort of like wedgie between these two, between those two areas. Actually, you know what? I'm going to just move on. I've got other stuff to do today. This has got a big chunk of bullish divergence between this low and the previous low on the MACD. That's the wedgie type chat there. That makes sense. This is a bearish trend with a really good opportunity for a low risk management longing it from this point here, where you could manage your risk in it around these numbers here. And then if it were to go towards the top side, there's plenty of gains to be had there on that one. If not, well, then you already know that chat that things such as that, of course, as is a bearish trend with this showing us, that we've got that on the DMI, for instance. So there you go. That's good enough, right? It's totally good enough. Catch you next time. I'm Rocky Outcrop, by the way. Share it with your friends. Really do appreciate it when people do that. I massively do. Let's see if we can get to 2,000 subscribers during September. That would be awesome. We're at 1,660 at the minute, so we've got about 350 to go. That would be cool if we could do that. I would really appreciate it. And I would really, starting by hitting that like button and leaving a comment down below is a really good way to do it. And then, of course, chit chat. If you can chit chat in there and get a bunch of bit more comments, then you never know. That might get more sort of the engagement thing with YouTube, and I don't know, get suggested people. I don't really know. I don't really mind. I just hope that we get a nice continued positive stuff on the channel. Everything's been going along well so far. Let's just see if we can keep that going. I really do appreciate you tuning in today. YouTube.com/Rocky Outcrop. Share it with your friends. Catch you next time.